against the Rogue. It's just the problem with any of these decks that try to seize board, because Rogue, we do talk about it being a burst deck in the late game, which obviously it absolutely is, and none has demonstrated that burst potential better than Surrender, where he did, what was it, double Wicked Stab plus Fireball plus Thalnos for like 18 burst combo or more, even it was like 22 or something in the end. Absolutely insane. And of course the man crit combo where he drew all the cards in his deck. But if you can't gain board control at the start of the game, it's very difficult for that burst to be enough against Warrior, especially given how fast they kill you when they do have board. And in all honesty, it just feels nigh on impossible to win board against this Warrior if they get any kind of a reasonable start.
Especially if they generate Kara. That is so powerful, especially when paired with Warmaul Challenger, which Alutemu kept in the mulligan. So as soon as the Warmaul Challenger comes down, Rogue will almost never try and deal with that. It's not worth it, a one-attack minion. But then you think the one thing that punishes me if I leave that on board is Rakara, and we can see for Alutemu, it's there. It's already looking scary for Surrender, especially since he doesn't have a hand that really wants Octobot discounts. Nothing that would accelerate a curve, because it's just cheap minions to begin with.
It's just so weird going into this series not thinking, or the person who's playing against either of these players is just at a huge disadvantage. When I'm thinking, oh my god, someone's playing against Alutemu, how did they win? But then on the other side, it's someone who's playing against Surrender. Like, I just feel like neither of these players can really lose unless they get very, very unlucky. But obviously, one of them does.
I'll tell you how they lose. I'll tell you, they get their Cryptid Knight in Give Please. He is the only one capable of felling the giants.
That's true, actually, yeah. Well, he's out of the way now, so it's going to be an unstoppable force and an immovable object.
And in Surrender's case, we actually don't have any basis for saying that he would switch to secondary or tertiary based on the previous matches, because he never faced against Rush Warrior in the preliminaries. He had a Token Druid fight and OTK Demon Hunter fight. And so we're not necessarily sure if he will get onto that tertiary. For now, though, it looks like... Oh man, is this Aug Merchant just to proc the combos?
Yeah, like I'm looking at obviously Aug Merchant. Like you could look at Shadow Step here on your Octobot. Obviously mainly for the combo effect, but also because you could replay it and then after you've generated a spell, cast the Aug Merchant on it to make it cheaper. But you really want to step the One Thief with this hand. It's very low value.
Yeah. It was between one of those two. Surrender just gonna step the Octobot here and look for something better. Hello? It's all garbage!
Yeah. You can make it cost 7 at least, which is something, but it's not much.
I think the reasoning for stepping Octobot rather than One Thief was because of how they interact. Like how you just said, you can take an expensive spell and maybe put it down by 1 mana. So even if you don't get much quantity of mana discounted, that can be offset by just the tempo you get by playing a spell 1 turn earlier than it's usually available. In this case, though, Surrender might not even see turn 7.
We'll have to see. It's a powerful start for Alutemu, but admittedly, a somewhat slow one. He's not popping off with huge amounts of damage quite yet. If Surrender does get some decent draws, I'm talking about field contact, you know, a secret passage in the next turn or two, he's starting to have enough mana to the point where that is playable and quite powerful. But as soon as Watley hits, that is when things start really going into overdrive.
Right. This is just a very, very low tempo start for both players. Just not much attack going on either way, but just looking at how the hands are shaped, that slow start favors Alutemu way more. Like you said, the Watley gets him the guaranteed bumper car, Sword Eater, and Alexstrasza. And he already has the parade leaders. He could also just have something better to do next turn with the athletic studies. So Surrender really needs that field contact. I think the secret passage would not even be good enough here because he needs a play by next turn or else it might be too late.
And I don't think you're at the point where you need to clear this Warmaul Challenger. There's no Shield of Honor in the deck. It's really only Rakara that can buff it while it's on the board, and it's just way too expensive. Because like you said, one of the real outs, honestly one of the few outs at this point, is field contact. So saving this Brain Freeze feels way too important.
This is very sadly just a dagger pass turn. For Surrender, he's really just going to have to rely on the quality of his top decks for now. If it's not field contact, there's still quite a few good draws. Mankrik and Kazakus being the big one come to mind. Oh, Rikara for days. Alutemu is just the best Rush Warrior player I've ever seen. Rikara is just the best card.
That is disgusting. Even one extra attack on this Warmall Challenger is so huge.
Oy, oy, oy. Even if he did top deck Kazakus, okay, Surrender did find it. I was gonna say, it might be too slow, but the fact that the Brain Freeze is discounted to 0 mana is huge here. Finally, Surrender can get something going. Rush for himself could be pretty good, looking at the shape of that 2-5. Stealth is also worth thinking about.
Stealth is really nice. It's one of the few things that Warrior can't immediately interact with all the Rush minions in their deck. I would be very heavily looking at that.
And the draw.
Whoa.
Perfect for Surrender. I think I still would have landed on Rush here because just because this turn will still leave a 2-5 on Alutemu's side of the board, and it also just lines up nicely against both Watley and Sword Eater. But we'll see which keyword Surrender took. I think there's no argument about taking the draw though. Yeah, it's Rush.
Yeah, I went with Rush. Fair enough.
Ooh. Strong draw for Alutemu. It does get him card draw, but I think it's still got to be Watley because gets the body on board plus more draw.
Yeah, agreed. It's just too clean.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And now we have a game on our hands there. Both players finally putting together something powerful. And in Surrender's case, he will need more removal than what's in hand right now. I think he needs to hit Prize Plunderer to make a real swing turn. Whereas on Alutemu's side, a lot of the minions are just built-in removal by themselves, especially with the Parade Leader to pair.
Right. That's an interesting draw in Tenwu. Honestly, that was kind of one of the cards that made me want to pick Stealth, because you can then Tenwu to draw 2 more cards off of your guy, which is still potentially possible if he uses the Guardian Orc Merchant to fully clear the board. But unlikely,
That's true.
Of course.
He knows about Bumper Car, so the kind of cute play I was thinking of the 5-3 into the 3-5, and then you put the Divine Shield on the Golem, looks worse because that gets checked by Bumper Car plus 1/1s. So I do like your idea of just clearing the board. Instead, you leave 2 health on the Golem.
I mean, the alternative is just saving the Guardian Orc Merchant. Obviously, if you do find field contact, it becomes a lot better to give it Divine Shield immediately. But I don't know. I think in this instance, you can just take a clear board and try and stick tempo for a couple turns.
Indeed. Surrender finally got a hold on the board, and now it's time for Alutemu to respond. And boy, can he respond efficiently. Parade Leader, Bumper Car, hello. Can even go Crab Rider instead of the Death Rattles from the Bumper Car.
There's actually a few ways you can go about this, right? I'm kind of looking at Sword Eater plus Crab Rider on this turn, which would allow you to clear the board and stick a slightly bigger body in play. Okay,
he goes... Yeah, okay. So he went for a combination of both of our plays, Bumper Car with the Sword Eater. And this leaves him all of the 1/1s with both of the Parade Leaders. So in terms of building up for even more efficient removal, I think Alutemu absolutely hit the nail on the head.
This is really
Fireball,
tough.
Right?
Yeah,
Look at the stabs in his hand.
Devolving is so sick against Warrior. It's one of the best cards, especially once they start buffing. But double Wicked Stab Fireball? It's 1-in-1 game this weekend already. Why not another?
Yeah, I don't think this is a devolving game. Alutemu has so much value, and he's been showing that he's willing to face tank minions. Surrender can end this turn with still meager minion presence, but say another Discover on the One Thief. Okay, alright, Surrender. Maybe it wasn't enough.
That's not terrible for him, right?
I think it's pretty good. He gets to push more damage.
With that. Gets another roll here. This time I think you are looking for Fireball, Mask of Cthulhu, Ruined Orb, Apexis Blast, anything that can go face.
Oh, but then now you have Deep Freeze into Deep Freeze as a curve
That's pretty
opportunity.
sick.
Yeah, okay, he just does take the damage here. Maybe that was partially informed by how the devolving missiles turned out, which was, very aggressive.
Okay, now we're clearing the board. No two ways about it. 100% clear. Troublemaker next turn, Alexstrasza turn after. If you can set it up for this Corehound to attack face as well. Or the, sorry, not the Corehound. But either way, Felmore, yeah, a lot of damage can go face here. And that is when Rogue really starts to struggle.
Most of the time they would, but this Deep Freeze is going to have a big impact on this game. Not necessarily sure if it's enough to get Surrender out of the board deficit, but it'll at least slow Alutemu down because he's had to use all of the rush minions in hand actually to deal with the current board, which means that the 3/6s have a fair chance of sticking around.
This is going to be really close. I'm honestly surprised that Surrender is even at this point, and it does perfectly demonstrate the weakness of Warrior right now, which is what is putting Alutemu in this tough situation. He wants to swing his face into the minion because this Crab Rider is his ticket to victory right now, but there's no armor gain or no life gain in the deck. Alexstrasza is as good as it gets, and it's too slow.
He does have a good curve from here on out. The Troublemaker, even though the 3/3 summon do not match up well against water elementals, it's enough stats that Surrender will have to hesitate in most situations. Because he's only threatening 6 at the moment, and the Wicked Stabs plus the Rune Orb are 10, so it's not lethal just yet. Like one off with the dagger as well.
So are you going Troublemaker face with everything? Because you're going to get another weapon next turn anyway?
Yeah, no choice.
Oi, oi, oi.
And you kind of hope the 3/3s kill the water elementals. If they don't, though, it's just setting up the race. And I think it really will be coming down to what comes off the Rune Orb for Surrender. This is discover a spell, not a mage spell. So he can get Sinister Strike, he can get another Wicked Stab, and he is going for it.
He has the outs for lethal right now if he can hit them.
Oh no! 1 mana off!
Oh, that's
deadly
so
poison.
close!
Which means he's kind of dead now.
He's kind of dead.
Like, from his perspective, he can survive by sending Wicked Stabs to minions, or possibly even Swindle to find Brain Freeze, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But we can see the Alex in Alutemu's hand. And
It's
the Swindle
just
whiffs.
It's just about surviving till turn 10. Once he gets there, he almost always will be able to find the lethal, but he's not going to be able to get there.
I don't think he gets to turn 9 even.
Yeah. Oh, Brain
brutal.
Freeze. Yeah, it's all we're looking for now.
Alright, Splendor deals with the 5/4, then he trades into the 5/2, but the Troublemaker sticks around. Surrender knows it's not enough, and by the tiniest of margins, Alutemu wins Game 1.
Man, that was a very well played game by Surrender. I think, he had a very low value hand. The only differing choices that we can look at are, of course, shadow stepping the Octobot instead of the Wand Maker or the Wand Thief, sorry, which I think was fine in all honesty. It allowed him to get a bit more tempo at the sacrifice, of course, of the little bit more value he could have generated. And obviously the Kazakus options he could have picked, but I think in the end there was very strong reasoning behind everything he picked. It's just a tough matchup.
It truly is. And now we get to answer the question that we've been asking since the very beginning, which is whether Surrender has this tertiary built for Rush Warrior, or even if it's not specifically built for this matchup, whether he thinks it is good enough to shift onto. Again, it has 2 Broomsticks and 2 Patient Assassins in there, and if I'm seeing this tracker correctly, Derek, he has switched onto it. This is a very, very cool set of tech cards.
And interestingly enough, it looks like they've both switched to their tertiary, which I expected from Surrender, as you were saying. The Patient Assassins, very difficult for Warrior to deal with. Alutemu, though, is switching into double Ogremancer in his list, which, okay, against Rogue, they do play quite a few spells, many of which are very cheap and want to combo together. But I didn't necessarily see this as an obvious switch for him.
Me too. Obviously, this is not heavily tacked towards, say, Demon Hunter and Token Druid the way that some other players are also playing double Cult Neophyte. It's only 2 cards swapped, so largely the same deck. And the cards that Alutemu has removed to make room for the Grandmasters are one Outrider's Axe, the only one that was in the deck to begin with, and the one of Marchand Elite. These are both cards that Alutemu in the primary was already saying they're not good enough for me to have 2 copies of. And I can get behind getting rid of the Marchand Elite. Doesn't seem like it can consistently go off all that often. But the Outrider's Axe I kind of value just as burst damage. It feels that as much as Rogue can try and beat you down with the Wicked Stabs, the Warrior can also just try and race the Rogue, especially when they have weapon damage.
That's very true. There is still a lot of weaponage in the deck, so I'm not especially sad to see that. I mean, it more just makes me question like the original list in the first place, if you're so desperate to take out these Marchand Elites in both your secondary and tertiary. But either way, a good start here for Alutemu with weapons coming online. Warmal Athletic Studies very likely to be able to lock down the board. But for Surrender now, his hand that looks in a way pretty similar to last game with Octobot, Orc Merchant, Shadow Step. In another way, looks very different because he's got the field contact ready to go alongside any reductions that he can do with the Octobot.
Absolutely. That's the trump card here. The thing is, the only activator for field contact at the moment is what he wants to use to activate the Octobot in the Guardian Aug Merchant. So for Surrender, I think it is a very good idea to just get the Octobot online right now. He doesn't necessarily have to use Aug Merchant to pop off on this. Very likely, Alutemu will just try and bite the bullet and deal with this. Because at the moment, if they did not start with Parade Leader on the board, there's no way, I believe, for Warrior to deal 4 damage in one fell swoop.
Kind of interesting to see Alutemu go for the athletic studies, because there are obviously many 2-drops. We're looking at Bumper Card, Crab Rider, even the Razor Gill 3-1, whatever that new Murloc is called. But it does obviously come at the sacrifice of playing something very likely on turn 2 here.
I definitely agree with the pick, though. I think Alutemu probably sacrificed the Parade Leader on curve with this in mind, getting a minion that he can play that one-shots the Octobot next turn. And that means it would deny Surrender the frenzy potential. So Surrender has to think about what's the likelihood Alutemu got something that would deny me my discounts. And he says, I don't want to take the risk. I'm going to proc the Octobot right now. And I think that's largely informed by the draw of Foxy Fraud, which can pair with the field contact.
Yeah, I think that's very smart. He could even step the Foxy, play it again. If he gets any combo card to go alongside that, One Thief Swindle, even just a Prize Plunderer, you'd be very happy with that turnout.
Alutemu drumming the fingers on the cheek, trying to figure out the turn. And this is a way to clear both minions, even though it feels a bit awkward to send your 3 damage into the 1 health minion. This was the only way he could end up with a clear board on Surrender's side of the field. It's already looking like a decent curve for Alutemu from here on out. The conditioning can go off on turn 5, potentially as well.
Oh, it's a tough choice for Surrender, though. Is this ever Secret Passage on this turn instead? You can try and get yourself some extra cards to go alongside the field contact, or even if you just like slam Mancrick onto the board, it's just more tempo than what you'd be doing otherwise.
I think it's quite good. If he hits a single Swindle or something of that extent, or like you said, Mancrick, playable card, it's worth it. To the point where Surrender is just going to go second passage, because this is absolutely not what the broomsticks are in the deck for. I can see Assassin being played here, but that's got to be Foxy Swindle. That makes life very easy now.
So he's played only 2 cards, so it would only deal 3 damage on the Plunderer, so yeah. I do think I agree.
It's gotta be the card draw. It just compounds his field contact pop-off way more on average.
I agree. It feels really bad to not play the Impatient Assassin, because it could actually just be pretty insane here. It's a cool tech for this specific matchup, but cards are cards. They're just too useful.
Cards are cards. Very insightful. I agree.
I'm not wrong.
And Alutemu going to curve out like we discussed. That Crab Rider entering the hand is very relevant now that conditioning next turn will be up to +2/+2.
Look at that. Conditioning Parade Leader Crab Rider is such a sick turn 5.
Oh, but this turn's really tough for Surrender because at the moment he only has 1 proc for field contact in the Foxy Fraud. He's running Patient Assassins, which, you know, those don't work with field contact.
Yeah.
Is this ever Mancrick can wait? Feels so slow.
The problem is that you have to envisage that, next turn there's a very reasonable chance that you are going to play your upgraded Wicked Stabs to deal 4 damage to just try and clear some stuff on the board. It's a pretty good chance that they start putting some kind of meat on the board that actually has a high attack value.
He's even thinking about Octobot with, I guess, stab on the 2-2.
On his own Octopus?
Okay, alright.
Oh.
You know, actually, this is a really cool play. It just makes the field contact turn so much smoother. He can fit in both Mancrick and the Foxy Fraud and gives himself the highest chance of actually drawing something to pair with the Foxy Fraud.
You know what? Fair enough. It's going to have to be the mother of all field contact turns, but it's a very flashy play, if nothing else. I like to see it.
Speaking of flashy plays, Alutemu conditioning for a big fat Murloc with Wind Fury.
Yeah.
You can fit in the Parade Leader if you like.
Right, and that's kind of the awkward thing here because in a way, the best thing to do would be to go conditioning Hero Power Pass, because then next turn you can go Parade Leader, Playmaker, Crab Rider all in one fell swoop. Obviously, then you just haven't played a bunch of stats, so it's not the play. But the Playmaker does just kind of sit awkwardly in hand now because you then reduce, or sorry, the Warsong Outrider costs the full 4, so you can't play it next turn.
Right. I definitely like the idea of where you're coming from, of, you know, having minions in hand sometimes is a good way to wait out the rogue and force them to play the resources, and then you can respond and get rid of everything. But in this instance, he has so many minions that even if Surrender gets both the prize plunderers, he's still going to stick something. So I think for Alutemu, going super wide on the board is one way you can play around field contact. The other is to play nothing at all, but he already had minions, so I prefer this.
Well, here we go. For Surrender, that animated broomstick is a sick top deck, though, working perfectly in combination. Drawing a card, giving everything rush, brain freeze for 0 mana, sign me up. Then you can shadow step your Foxy again, I suppose.
Yeah. Or even the Mancrick.
Sure.
And then it can go with the broom. If there's one thing I know about you in Surrender, okay, that's the shadow step target. It's gotta be, right? 2 prize plunderers is really good.
Yeah, it has to be, right? It's so clean.
Okay, maybe Surrender counted and it's not actually enough cards on it, but I thought it would go on the Murloc and then somewhere else. But it's true that the Murloc is frozen, so he doesn't have to deal with it right now. And oh my goodness.
Oh, this turn is so sick.
Who's the rush deck now, Alutemu? Yes, oh my goodness. When I was talking about how they need to have both prize plunders, and even if they get both of them, you still stick minions, I just kind of forgot about the broomsticks.
Yeah, that's such a sick inclusion. But the bumper car on the other side is the top deck for Alutemu. So clutch here to be able to clear the board, fill up his hand again. As soon as he gets run that conditioning, whatever, he's just miles ahead again.
This is so huge. It had to be that top deck.
Yep.
Alutemu did not have good answers if it were not for the bumper car. But Surrender, is it go again? This doesn't go as hard as last turn, but it's still pretty decent.
You can do some powerful stuff, right? Contact, Wicked Stab. You can't get the prize plunder to 5, which is the awkward part, but you can give everything rush at least.
Oh, it's really tough because what I'm looking at is Assassin to go into the Playmaker, but if you play Assassin, the only Battlecry you can pair with the field contact is the Broomstick. Obviously, you want more minions to go with the Broomstick, so I wonder if it's double Assassin Broomstick, and then you keep one of them stealthed?
Yes, that's kind of what I'm looking at now. I'm still not certain if that's better than just going in with field contact and praying that you get something good, but if you whiff on the contact, you're very limited on card draw, right? Because then you've used both contacts and both secret passages as well, for that matter.
But there is good stuff he can get off the field contact right now. Shadow Step would be huge. It's a really tough turn, and if Surrender is roping it, I don't think he's going to contact this turn.
Yeah, he's going down the same avenue as us in the end.
So he can't actually keep the second stealth unless he uses something else to deal with the Murloc. Okay, so he is just going to use the stab this way. Yeah. I do believe this gives Surrender the best chance of winning back board, but okay, looking at what's left in his list, there's actually still quite a bit of value. Even though there's few cards, there's Alexstrasza, Jandice, Kazakus in there. So the quality of his deck right now is very, very high.
It's incredibly high. Whereas Alutemu, you have to remember, the average top deck in Warrior is not that good. If you can get Troublemaker or Alex, sure, you're miles back in the lead. But without specifically those top-end draws, the buff cards don't do much, the rush cards don't do much. You need combos to get anything going.
And it's to the point where Alutemu is like, I'm probably going to float a lot of mana next turn too, so why would I feed this Warsong Outrider to the Patient Assassin right now? He's going to hold completely, and Surrender gets another proc with the field contact. This is big. First, like, the first proc of the Prize Plunder, pretty irrelevant, but Cycle, so good right now. If he can hit Kazakus or Chance.
But he can't actually play any of those cards, right? He would have to then just Shadow Step the Prize Plunger. Like, if you draw Jandice, are you really going to play the Shadow Step on anything other than Jandice?
That's true. Gosh, does he hold all together then? Because none of these cards can be played without one other.
Exactly.
And so if he holds, then Troublemaker is very, very bad for him.
Yeah.
Give me that.
So it's just deciding between how long he can wait, and Surrender says he can wait no longer.
Okay.
Oh, Flame Strike!
Oh my goodness, this is the perfect sequence of draws.
I mean, it was pretty likely to happen that he would get the 310 Mankrik at this point. Surrender is approaching the bottom of his deck.
Yeah.
Mirror Entity, wow.
To play around the Troublemaker, it's like one of the only outs left for Alutemu, and it has to come off the top because Surrender knows both of the cards in his hand are Studies, a random rush minion, and Dark Moon Rider.
I mean, but if you can't play the Entity this turn, it's kind of bad, right? Because if it's like Troublemaker the turn after, then they just Rider first. But
that's true.
I guess Alexstrasza is something to think of. Yeah, obviously Surrender didn't have much time. The most important thing is that he got this immense board presence, so much value in hand, and Alutemu cannot set up the race. It's too far away. He has another weapon swing next turn with the Gunnar going off, but that's only 14 with Alex.
Oh man, this was so sick. Like, I don't think I've seen, maybe ever, the wicked stab on your Octobot. Like, people talk about it like often as a meme, but you can only do it in the first 4 turns of the game, and it was just so perfectly timed by Surrender, because outside of that, I don't think he was pulling himself back.
Such a sick setup. It is paying off big time here. Patient Assassin checking the... I forget the name of this card. It is just worse than Patient Assassin is what it is here.
Right. Like, what do they do? Unless it's exactly Troublemaker to exactly hit the Patient Assassin, at which point you're kind of winning anyway. Patient Assassin is just ludicrous.
Surrender has Jandice to follow up here. Attacking from all fronts, he will well and truly win the board this turn. He has Alex in hand for the next turn. He is living, or Bank Yugi is living vicariously through Surrender here as well. I mean, he doesn't even have to unveil the Patient Assassin if he doesn't want to, because the then Trasher has Rush on it. I do feel that the 5 attack is more valuable at this point in the game, though.
I mean, if they have Dark Moon Riders, they can just clear it off anyway. Like, I think you just cash in your 5 rush and keep the stealth in play. It's so sick.
Sure. For Surrender, I'm just interested in him ending the game next turn. Which, if they are on turn 9 playing Dark Moon Riders, I feel like you're pretty happy with that.
That's also true.
Last card in Surrender's deck is a One Thief, I believe. And Alutemu simply cannot answer all this.
just not
Wait.
attack?
I think, yeah, Surrender's as baffled as we are.
I don't know if, I don't know. We'll call that a rope issue or whatever. Because, like, yeah, that wasn't even a mistake. That was just him like, what just happened? I meant to attack with that and something went wrong. He ended the turn by misclicking.
It felt like he had pointed the Vancrick well before the rogue ran out, so I'm inclined to think something went wrong on the technical side here. In any case, Alutemu is sure that the Aegwin is at full 5 health, so just Alex himself?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that Surrender managed to attack with the Patient Assassin, but not the Mancrick, which allows him to just be cleaned up super easily.
Okay, Alex on the Aegwin instead.
Yeah.
That is a juiced one thief for sure.
Oh, man, not even turn 10 and he's drawn literally every card in his deck. This rogue, when it does what it's meant to do, is disgusting.
Truly. For Surrender, I'd be thinking about the 1-cost Golem here, just because you definitely want to Brain Freeze this turn. And you probably want Thief too if you are going to Brain Freeze this turn. And if he goes 1-cost with Kazakus, you could potentially Mirror Entity instead of going 1 Thief and still fit in the Brain Freeze.
Yeah, if he did go for 1, he's missed Poison here, but just +1/+1, honestly, to set up lethal does seem better. He's actually gone with 10 cost, though, completely on the other end of the spectrum.
Okay,
oh, Apexis?
He's going to play everything but that.
Maybe it's just
Ruined Orb.
He has plus spell damage now from the the Aegwin. That's disgusting. Cold Blood? Oh!
I mean, it literally doesn't matter. He has to Brain Freeze here instead.
Oh, true.
For the Alex Straza. That's why I was saying 1-cost Golem, because it pretty much doesn't matter as long as you set up for Alex. Surrender is saying 10-cost Golem, because it pretty much doesn't matter as long as you set up for Alex.
And there it is, Alutemu, whatever he drew off the top of his deck, we did not get there in time to see it because he instantly throws down the game. Obviously a weird way for Surrender to end the game, considering both of the other games played had like the coolest lethals I've ever seen, and this, something went wrong and he just missed 3 damage and could have hit lethal a turn earlier. It does not matter though. In this instance, he was able to get the win with some really clever plays in the early game on Rogue. Like, those early turns, they're so just fiddly and pernickety, and you have to get them exactly right or your entire deck just falls apart. And I think he sequenced that all absolutely gorgeously, realizing exactly the moment to go in with the field contact when everything in his hand cost 1 or 0. It was so clever.
I don't know if I'm reading a children's book right now, Jared. Fiddly, pernickety, and lemony snickety. I don't know what I'm saying at this point. Always learning new words when I talk to you, but obviously, yes, the key play for Surrender was the Octobot with the Wicked Stab for 2. That was incredible foresight to set up a bigger swing turn with field contact, because a lot of times with this rogue, drawing 1 or 2 off the contact is not enough, even if you do have to give up value in the early game. If you can salvage it all by getting a huger Pride Splendor or Broomstick with the Patient Assassin in this case, then it is all you need to close out the end game there. That was really impressively done, and we're gonna see this rogue again.
And I think here, what it really shows to me is just the difference in... I'm not even sure if it's necessarily amount of preparation time, but the speed with which Surrender can perceive what the best way to approach a matchup is. Because we've had, over in Europe, when we had the Psycho vs. Swids Priest mirror, where things obviously got a bit clowny in the end, but the primary and tertiary decks specifically for the mirror kind of felt like misaligned, like they didn't really understand what the perfect game plan was, probably because they didn't have time to perfectly test it out because it's Priest mirrors, but it wasn't as streamlined as it could have been. Whereas here for Surrender, if you're thinking anti-warrior in Rogue, it would take me so long to think Broom, Patient Assassin. I don't think I would ever come up with that combo, let alone in like the 3 days that they had in order to perfectly come up with the list to tech against the expected field. I just think it's so clever and something that so few players would have come up with.
Sure. On top of having Warrior on your radar at all, which is not something that every player in APAC had. And for Surrender, as we often tout him as being in contact with mostly the Korean scene, maybe it was communication with High 3 that led him to this conclusion. But even then, a lot of the practice groups, after they discussed the field, they thought Warrior was the best deck. But if you could go one step higher and tech for what most people thought was the best deck while still maintaining advantage against the rest of the field, and especially in Surrender's case, playing an archetype that I feel gets a lot of percentage for very, very skilled players such as himself, this could be just a brilliant way to approach Specialist. However, the opening hand is looking like the exact half of the deck that you don't want to start with.
Kind of. Patient Assassin at the start can buy you quite a bit of time, even if it just bumps into a Crab Rider, bumps into a Parade Leader, whatever, just to clear off something. You will take that. But on the other side, Alutemu has a blisteringly fast start to the game here with potentially Parade Leader and then turn 3 Crab Rider, coin Crab Rider. There's a lot of pressure that can start coming down.
Yeah. It was between second Crab Rider and Runthak here. Overall, I like the Runthak because he can just save the discount on the from the athletic studies and just skip over the first Crab Rider altogether. Get an early Runthak. Well, I don't see any harm in just starting with the Patient Assassin here.
Yeah, it's just whether he wants an activator for Brain Freeze next turn, because the rest of his hand really doesn't want to be played out. And, you know, if it's Parade Leader, Bumper Car, even Crab Rider, actually, for that matter, because he would have the hero power already done, I think it's close.
That is very true. It's also just such a weird dynamic, because if you start with Patient Assassin, that very often messes with what they would do on turn 2 if you hadn't played that. And then you kind of have to get in Alutemu's headspace of, am I okay with potentially giving up a Parade Leader or Crab Rider into the Patient Assassin? And I think based on the way the previous game went, he would be happy giving one of those away. So in the end, starting with Dagger, I think makes a lot more sense, because then he can threaten the Patient Assassin and, as you said, get the combo with Brain Freeze.
Yeah, I think it's a minor but potentially important optimization. For Alutemu, though, drawing the second stage dive does potentially make him deviate away from what we would expect. It could very possibly be stage dive, maybe even Crab Rider after that, depending if it's the one in his hand or if he draws one, and then just coin Runthak on 4 anyway to follow up.
The early Runthak plan I was talking about a while ago, obviously that's in a world where there's no Patient Assassin on the other side. So yes, it's already forcing Alutemu to deviate quite a bit. So sacrificing a Crab Rider to the gods. He does play the buffed one, right? Because the other one, like the assassin can value trade the other one.
I never thought I would see the day where Patient Assassin being buffed to a 1/2 is actually relevant in a Grandmasters match, and it forces Alutemu to throw out the buffed Crab Rider. That is pretty sick.
It is pretty sick. But Surrender has nothing else to do.
Yeah. I'm looking
this
at like...
is bad. I don't even think he can afford to use this Patient Assassin on this, because this turn 5 is a whole lot of nothing. You can make the argument that Wicked Stab is much better next turn. So maybe it will be Wicked Stab plus Prize Plunder to get rid of the next threat and then follow up Jandis, but is that better than save the Assassin for that threat?
And so then what do? Are you going Wicked Stab, Prize Plunder, and Broom to kill it off? Like,
oh no, never mind. Yeah, everything's bad. Just bites the bullet here. Alutemu finally gets the chance to play a minion and have it stick. Oh, Runthaks for days?
Third Runthak. Oh,
it's already golden. Does it turn into diamond now?
That's how it works. If you get 3 of them, yeah. Yeah, I do like the Samurai pick, in all honesty, because I think it just allows you to have buff, but also then the ability to clear the board.
I think it's a very disciplined pick. If we look at that state of board Surrender had after his big Prize Plunder, Field Contact plus Broomstick turn, it was just kind of a bunch of fragile minions, 1 to 2 health. So even though the Samuro is at 1 attack right now, it could help Alutemu stave off some of the worst case scenarios, while he still does have Runthak to push initiative if he needs it. Ay. Wicked Stab plus Prize Plunder swing?
Mm.
Oh, yucky. I mean, he has the Foxy Fraud first as well. Or something to buff the Prize Plunderer a bit more.
So then do you play Broom as well? Or are you going Foxy Prize Plunderer deals 1, Step It deals 3? Yeah, that doesn't get there either.
I think it's Stab Foxy Prize Plunderer with the swing that deals with it. What I'm looking at for Surrender's curve now is Jandis on 6 and Shadow Step It, and then you play Jandis with the Broom on 7.
Okay. That sounds as good a plan as any.
Yeah. But yeah, second run attack, oof.
Yeah, the first one didn't get to attack, but this one getting the buff is huge. Buffing the Samuro, buffing the Crab Rider. Some pretty good minions to buff.
Yeah. Oh, the way Samuro interacts with Jandis as well is quite brutal. If no taunts are generated, that is. It's like a free tester on which one is the illusion, as well as just hitting Jandis herself most of the time.
Alright, does allow him to clear the run attack whilst also developing Jandis, so we're looking for big minions.
Ooh.
And to be fair, those are pretty good.
Sorry, Jarek, I think you found your new meme for the week. Alutemu's reaction to this Jandis. You'll never run out of Alutemu reaction gifs.
He is such a gold mine of reactions.
Okay. Well, while I thought that was insane, it actually just kind of gets blown up by Samuro, doesn't it?
It does. Oh, the first one at least does.
Yeah, the first
follow-up
wave
is when things maybe get a little bit trickier for Alutemu. But he does get a pretty big board development. You know, we're looking at Samuro Crab Rider to get stuff on board, as well as clear the board on the other side. And then as long as he can survive to Troublemaker, that is where things get very tricky for the Rogue.
But actually, because Alutemu knows there's second wave of Jandis, maybe it's not Samuro this turn. The Crab Rider now has 5 health, so it can actually go into the 4-2 and then the 5-6, which he knows is illusioned. And I don't think he minds very much leaving up a 3-2, or he could just bumper car with a 1-3. There's probably a better way of doing this if he is going to play bumper car. And you can even fit in ETC, actually, with all those rush minions.
I wonder if that is better, though, because you can, like, with the next turn, it's still a Jandis board, right? There will still be an illusioned minion, most likely, so you could then just bump a car into that instead, whereas this way you have a full health Crab Rider. Samuro is a pretty big threat as well.
Well, but the thing is, you don't know which one will be illusion next turn. Right now, he has the full knowledge, and I feel like that's pretty valuable because Samuro allows you to, like, hit a minion, and it also tests for which one is the illusion. So I really like this play from Alutemu. He just found the better way of trading than what I suggested.
Yeah, I'll go along with it. I still have questions, but obviously I am willing to admit that you and Alutemu combined are almost as good as me, so it's close to being correct at least.
Well, yeah, Surrender can mind game here. That's the thing.
Oh, really? You've, like, if it's longer than 2 seconds, you've already thought about it too long. You have to click on the correct one. You can't mind games then.
Fair. Is this just studies to fill out the mana? I'd imagine he wants to Broom to get the double dip on this Frenzy minion.
Oh, Mirror Entity, again, is actually pretty spicy here, right? It's a turn away from your opponent playing Troublemaker. You could play it and then go Secret Passage. It's a little dubious, but it could have been pretty strong.
That's true. In the end, Surrender going for filling out the mana. And he does take the Broom, even though it's only dealing with 1 minion. It is a high priority minion to kill, and he gets to push 5 to the face. Yep. Very strong. But so is this Samuro.
There we go. This is the payoff. And you know what? You were pretty right in the end. It's pretty disgusting here, in addition with, triple 1-drop or War Song, or War Maul Challenger. Like, they're both really powerful.
There's a lot of ways of, Surrender's reaction. Eric, you just have so many memes you can make out of this series. I was going to say there's some argument for putting the Samuro elsewhere than the 5 attack minion and then just trade off with the 2 Dark Moon Riders, but I do agree at this point, saving those for spot removal is very important. Surrender's boards that he builds are often wide and annoying, and Alutemu just used his best wide sweeping response tool.
Yeah, very, very sick sequencing from Alutemu there. I retract any doubts that I may have had. And also just a good draw there for Surrender, however, on the other side. He needed one pretty much exactly like this to have any chance of pulling it back. Flame Strike, if you're expecting the Troublemaker on the other side, is a way to deal with the expected wide board.
I think he needs something like that. The problem is, you also kind of want card draw. The ring toss is probably never gonna get you card draw here. This is not a rigged fair game being active type of situation. So because of that, I think it does have to be Flame Strike. And he'll have to rely on his top decks from this point onward.
Because there's a reasonable chance that some amount of damage sticks on the board so that you can use that with the 5 damage to get the extra 3 to kill off Troublemaker itself. I mean, having said that, it's going to be, what, a 9 health minion now, unless it came off the top because of the buff from Runthak earlier on. But either way, it's the best chance you have to clear it off, so I think you've got to grab it.
Agreed. But, oh man. Surrender is running out of time. He's only at 19 right now.
Man, this is close. Like, I really still don't know who I want to put in the lead here. Surrender is doing some strong stuff. Swindle, Steward, like, these are good cards. He has a full clear here with the Wicked Stab and the Flame Strike as well.
He nods his head at the Troublemaker. He knew this was coming.
Yeah.
The Flame Strike will, like you said, most of the time be able to clear because most of the time Surrender will still have damage on the board. Ooh, wait, that was nutty! Hello? That is checking the Flame Strike in the best way, right?
Sick.
Does he still have to Flame Strike to get rid of that with Wicked Stab? I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yeah,
he has to discover something better.
Yeah, you've got Broom plus Wicked Stab, if nothing else. Like,
yeah.
This is pretty good. Secret Passage as well to keep cycling through his deck. He's in this. Surrender is very much in this.
Yeah. He could play all the middle cards right now and get rid of the Troublemaker. And Alutemu is gassed out. Like, these Dark Moon Riders and Warmaul Challengers, they're not getting very much done. Alutemu needs Watley or Alexstrasza from this point. Second Troublemaker too. As for heavy hitters in Surrender's deck, he is running his own Alexstrasza. Kazakus is still in there as well. And he hasn't hit a single field contact.
The Brain Freeze kind of just better than the Wicked Stab. You ideally want to send that to the face unless he's just going for a pure like board dominance game plan. And I guess with Alexstrasza still to come, there's a very good chance that he'll get the burst damage anyway. And in the end, just going for both.
He had to decide, in my opinion, between Brain Freeze and Broom.
Yeah.
The Troublemaker had to go. Like, you can't let them get any more 3/3s. Yeah.
For sure. Ooh.
Ooh, that's big. But one turn off full activation, but obviously, I don't think Alutemu can wait. This is too much damage on the other side.
Is it though? Can you wait one turn?
No,
it's so sick.
No.
Wait one turn. It's so sick.
But you're so dead if you wait one more turn.
But it's so sick.
Surrender plays Alex and Kazakus, and I think he still has the other stab as well. Could be wrong. But it is just too scary.
Fine. Fine. As sick as it would have been, I'll concede this one.
It's a full board clear as well.
It is, yeah.
It's a lot of stats right now.
No, it's very, very strong.
Okay, and Surrender will still have a lot of utility in this Flame Strike. It clears all but the 3/10 Warmaul because this one will take 8 damage and go down to a 3/4.
Oh, this is a really tough choice as to whether you swing into it as well. Like, you're afraid of Alutemu, but you know 2 of the cards in hand are generated with Flame Strike and the Passage.
Yeah, it's hard. But you also know they were all discounted by an Octobot, so the breakpoints are really tough. This feels like it has to be Flame Strike and then Passage?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that you can get tricky here with like Octobot Rush and Prize Plunderer just to like spend 1 mana and deal with a bit of the board first and then Secret Passage.
Isn't that 2 mana? If you Octobot... Oh,
well, you rush and then damage it is... Yeah, sorry.
I see, yeah. That looks pretty good.
Ah, he's going for reducing the hand he draws. Okay, this is clever. I like this.
Yeah. Looks really good. So this not being a fully buffed Warmal Challenger does become relevant. I'll give you that, Tarek.
Yeah, it becomes very relevant. Gia, my play was much better, obviously.
Oh, Surrender never gets the early Mancrick, but somehow it feels even better. I know that's
true.
Not true. Early Mancrick is always good, but
does just feel better.
You just kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
And then Surrender pulls the rug out from under Alutemu. And Alutemu's out right now. Like, even if he gets Alex off the top, it's not lethal.
Okay,
well,
yeah. Very possibly we would have seen Shadow Step there just to not draw it, but I guess with only 4 cards left in the deck, he'll get every card in his deck with Secret Passage anyway, as Troublemaker is nice, but is it nice enough? It's just not enough.
It is really not enough, but I see it as Alutemu's only out to stay in the game was drawing Troublemaker into Alex next turn if he's not just dead. It had to be this exact combination, I think, yeah. Or like some weapon generator, but Troublemaker obviously better, right? Because you got the stats as well. It's not guaranteed to go face, but I think a lot of the time you end up with a board that Surrender either has to deal with or it will just go face.
So if 1/3/3 goes face, you have lethal with Alex off the top next turn.
Correct. I think Alutemu doesn't necessarily need to swing this turn. Because even if you draw a weapon generator next turn, I don't think it gives him any break points. But you can make the argument that you just swing now to kind of narrow the targets for the 3/3s, but I don't know if you want to narrow it so far that they're more likely to hit Mancrick and the 1/1. Those are the worst possible outcomes. So he's actually keeping the board as wide as possible and giving the 3/3s the best chance to take value trades. Okay. Oh! Wait.
Potentially just lethal right now with...
It's one off from Alex, right? Yeah, he's showing 5-7 right now. So if he gets Alex right off the wait.
Well, no, I'm thinking Zaka, sorry, for +8/+8,
okay.
or Alex, both of which are 1 damage off lethal. Alex is guaranteed now, so that's probably a better way to go about it. But remarkably close.
He gets to Alex and he gets Shadow Step. He already pointed the broom face.
You can Shadow Step the broom to rush the Alex, right? Is probably where my head is at, and then he gets to also point the damage face.
Yeah, that's really strong. Such a good spot. Wait, does he ever point it on his own face?
I don't think so. He can clear off enough to the point where that's not necessary, right?
Yeah. Right. If he clears the whole board, then even if Alutemu gets Alex off the top, it's not enough.
Yeah, this is a sick spot.
Very cool use of the broom once again.
Just so cleverly done by Surrender, and it needs to be a miracle top deck for Alutemu. The Playmaker is not it. The well played is thrown down, and in a matchup that I thought Alutemu would struggle to lose with how favored I've heard it is from other players, Surrender does the undoable and takes down one of the greatest players of all time in APAC, proving that he is himself just the absolute GOAT. What a series.
And he gives us his signature coy little smile at the end. But you know what, Surrender? You deserve to be smug and happy with yourself for that one, because that was so incredibly well played. The macro, the micro, using the stab on your own Octobot, and to the very last turn, spotting the Alex with the Shadow Step broom to clear the board and set up for a spot where Alutemu had no top decks for lethal. It's just pristine play.
It's just every time I see him, I am still I always think I appreciate now how good he is at Hearthstone, but he just does something even better every time. The tech decisions in his specialist lineup were so on point with so little time to prepare. Every trick in this Rogue deck, it feels like he knows inside and out, and this is really where the power of Rogue starts to shine through, because players say, it's strong, players say, it's weak, and then you get players like Casey saying it's the best deck in the game, to which you're like, okay, dude. And then he plays out of his mind, and you realize why it truly is. And in the hands of a player like Surrender as well, you appreciate the raw power of the deck when you spot every trick in the book ready to go alongside it. I think this is finally a return to the true form for Surrender. He's through to the semi-finals for the first time, and deservedly so. We are going to see him tomorrow fight